G'day, Josh here, back with another Chest Rush video, and in this one we're going to be talking about the way that damage works in the game, as it has changed more than once since the game first came out. So originally when the game came out, you took damage based on how many enemy heroes were still surviving on the board, and the rarer that those heroes were, the more damage you took. Pets or summons would also deal you damage, so you could take quite a bit from Beast Player, for instance, and I'm sure many of us have experiences where we took 28 health, for instance, in a round, which always sucked, but that was Beast Strength, in that they had lots of early damage, but it sort of tapered off a bit in the end game. And that was about it. That was the only real way you lost damage, with one exception. If you hit round 25 in Turbo, from round 25 and on, your health started to decay. So what that meant is after the round ended, you would actually, and it was actually as soon as the round, so as soon as the battle was over, you would take some damage, which meant that you could actually be winning on your board. This is back before it was a 1v1 situation during every battle. You actually win on the mirror image that you were playing, you face them, you beat them, and you still take damage because you were past round 25 in Turbo. And it was incredibly frustrating, and I know a lot of people would actually go into situations where they were winning and losing health and winning and then losing the game, even though the last rounds that they were on like a 5-game win streak, but because it was after round 25 and their health was too low, they just decayed too much and lost the game. So they were the two sources of health loss when Chest Rush first launched. Regular health loss from surviving enemy heroes and pets, and then in turbo mode, health decay after round 25. Now, in the most recent big patch, the patch that introduced Treasure Raider as a game mode and Guru's Trials and those sorts of things, the way that health was lost was changed a little bit. Now, not only did you have the decay in Turbo, now not only did you take damage from heroes and summons, but you also took 2 damage from the opponent that beat you. Their character, their avatar would actually deal you an additional 2 damage as well. And that was aligned with a change to the way that fighting or battles actually worked in all the game modes, in that you're no longer playing a copy of an opponent's board. You are actually directly matched up with an opponent. The only exception to this, if there was an odd number of people left, then one person matches up against a mirror image of somebody's board and they play that, and then it's not a true 1v1. But every other person is playing a true 1v1, and if there's an even number of players surviving, then it's always going to be a true 1v1 or head-to-head battles. So there's going to be a winner and a loser, apart from the very, very rare occasion that 2 surviving heroes kill each other at the same time and it ends up being a draw, which does actually count as a win for both parties. So draws don't end lose streaks. But what that meant is that now, because we were always having roughly 4 people win and 4 people lose every round, so games were ending a little bit quicker because of that, and the additional damage that the characters or the avatars now dealt as well meant that games were actually ending quite quickly. So because of that, certain strategies such as open forting, otherwise known as lose streaking, and certain end game strategies that might have taken a little bit more to set up or to transition into were no longer as viable, because the average game time had actually shortened by like a round, maybe 2 rounds in some cases. So it was a pretty significant reduction of average game time, and therefore it did affect the current meta quite significantly. So many people understandably were quite unhappy about the way that change had affected the game and the current meta and the strategies that were viable, and whether you could use open forting or not. So many members of the community, myself included, left feedback for Tencent on that matter, and credit to Tencent, they immediately opened up or offered a chance for community members to sign up and go and provide feedback in a feedback session, and immediately acted on that feedback that they then gathered. And so very, very quickly, they then rolled out a small patch that was experimenting with a change or a reduction to the additional damage dealt by characters, dealt by heroes in Treasure Raider mode initially. So Treasure Raider mode then started off with, I think it was 0 health, or maybe it was 1 health, sorry, lost during the first 10 rounds and then 2 health lost during the next 10 rounds. I can't remember exactly, but it was a reduction of what it currently was. It might have been 0, then 1, then 2, something like that. That only held for a very short period of time, as very quickly Tencent realized that, yes, the extra damage was probably too much. It had affected the average game length a little bit too dramatically. So they then went ahead and updated about a day and a half later with another patch that adjusted the extra damage it was being dealt by the opponent's character or their avatar, whichever term you prefer. And so now, present day, the current way that the extra damage works is that through rounds 1 to 10, you take 0 extra damage from the opponent's character when losing. The next 10 rounds, 11 through 20, you take 1 damage. The next 10 rounds, you take 2 damage. The next 10 rounds, you take 3, 4, and then round 50 and beyond, if somehow you got to that point in time in a game where you were still alive at round 50, then if you lose at round 50 and beyond, you're taking 5 extra damage. The other notable change they made is they got rid of the damage decay or health decay in turbo. So now the only sources of taking or losing health in any mode are losing a round and having the heroes and their pets or summons deal damage to you directly, and then also their character dealing you direct damage depending on what round you're in. So once again, if you're in rounds 1 to 10, 0 damage. 11 to 20, 1 damage. And then if I jump up a bit, 41 to 50, you're looking at 4 damage, and then 50 plus 5 damage. So it increases by 1 every 10 rounds, which is way, way better. So that will deal with the average length of the games. They're no longer going to be quite as short as they are. And that change, as I said, has already hit that patch rolled out recently. So it is already live. And I'm certainly a massive fan of the quick turnaround time from Tencent in addressing what the community felt was a pretty significant issue with the way that gameplay had been negatively affected. So that is a brief history and also an overview of where damage is currently at in the game. And I guess I just also want to give an acknowledgement to Tencent for being so proactive in not only interacting with the community, but getting feedback and then immediately acting on that feedback as well. So all around a positive experience for me. The initial patch that had the changes I wasn't super impressed with, but we as a community were able to come together and enact some change for good in the game. So give everyone that was part of that, definitely give yourselves a pat on the back. Really great to see the community come together like that and to improve the game essentially. So thank you to the community. Thank you to Chess Rush. Thank you to everyone that watched this video. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next one.